Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next edition of our Vera webcast series. My name is Grant Shirk. I'm the head of product marketing here at Vera, and today I am very happy to have with me my teammate Veliz Perez, also from the product marketing team, but also our special guest star today, Patrick Heim, who is the head of trust and security at Dropbox. Today's topic is powering secure collaboration. We're going to be discussing both topics of security, collaboration across organizations and within your organization, and also our overall approach to our partnership and the integration we recently announced. Before we get started, we have about 30 minutes of content, demo, and Q&A for you today. That is, all of you are getting situated and getting comfortable. If you do have questions, we have a couple opportunities to answer them throughout the session today. Please use the chat box in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. Whatever you put in there, we will see, and we will get those questions out to Veliz, to Patrick, and maybe I'll get to answer a few as we go. Also, if you have any trouble with technical issues on the webcast today, whether it's audio or video, also put them in there, and one of us or our operator will get you assisted with that. All right, good. We look forward to hearing from you, but I'm also looking forward to hearing from Patrick and seeing the demo from Veliz. So let's get started. What we're going to be talking about today is really four key things, right? First of all, we're going to dive into the background behind why Vera and Dropbox are working together, what some of the unique challenges are that we can solve for you and for your organization. But really underpinning behind that is a discussion around how Dropbox thinks about security, how you are probably thinking about how to protect collaboration across your organization and across the borders of your organization. And then we're going to show you some great new technology you could bring into your team in order to accomplish this in some new ways. And then at the end of the session, as I mentioned, we'll spend some time in questions. The real concept that we're trying to address is this idea of extending security through the last mile. As Patrick will share with us, Dropbox has put a ton of investment and effort into making sure that collaboration on their platform, content stored on their platform, is encrypted, tracked, monitored, and protected. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But one of the biggest challenges that we have seen and that I've seen in my career is that, well, okay, what happens if someone goes around the system? What happens if not every channel of communication goes through some sanction? How do I protect that information once it leaves my control? And that is the nature of the integration that we built and what we're going to show you today. And I think this gets to a fundamental question that has dogged security and IT certainly for the past 4 or 5 years, and definitely probably since the advent of email in business, is it's this struggle. How do I enable collaboration? How do I open up the channels that I have to work with customers and partners and internally? But also, how do I make sure I am backstopping my ability to protect my crown jewels, my most critical information in the organization? And we all know for a fact that it's a balancing act. We're constantly, and in the IT and security departments in particularly, we are the ones who are given the challenge of walking this narrow line. We're being pulled in one direction to meet the needs and the requests and the requirements of the business as they're trying to move faster, get more done with less, be more creative, look more technically savvy. While at the same time, particularly if you're in a regulated industry, you have the challenges of meeting compliance, meeting the requirements your risk team has placed on top of you, and just generally doing the right thing with the information that you're collecting and creating on a daily basis. We understand that, and that's why we brought this conversation together. And I think for me what it comes down to when you're struggling with this balancing act is that without visibility and control, you lose a good chunk of what security is trying to accomplish, which is controlling information. So if you work in a modern organization, this probably looks very familiar to you. You have a lot of sanction sharing services that you're chosen Dropbox Business for your organization. But people are also using email, they're using file shares, they're using other cloud services, and they are sharing both public information across those services, but also a lot of those crown jewels, that critical confidential business information, is taking multiple paths between your employees and then people outside, clients and partners, remote workers, mobile devices. And the challenge is how do I keep control over all of it? What can I do? And a big part of that is why Vera and Dropbox are working together, is how can we protect that confidential information, provide a level of visibility, monitoring, and even classification to that confidential business information as it passes through tools like Dropbox Business and through email before it makes it out into the wider world. And that's a bit of what we'll show you later, is how do I extend those protections? How do I enforce those classifications, those usage policies, and those restrictions as it moves through the last mile? This is a pretty nuanced conversation, and that's a big reason why we're excited that Patrick has been able to join us today. So we wanted to pause in the conversation and bring Patrick on and kind of cover a couple of fundamental topics in this conversation. So Patrick, welcome. Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you. Thank you, Grant.
Fantastic. So for our first question, let's go back to that initial struggle, that tightrope we're walking. So this idea of secure collaboration, is this a paradox? Is it an impossible task, or is this something we can actually take on?
It is my two favorite words. So obviously collaboration, that's the business Dropbox is in, and security is the field I've chosen for a long time. And I've never found the two to be mutually exclusive. So I'm very excited because what you've already mentioned, Grant, is something that in a number of roles that I've had in the past. I've been the CISO of a large distribution company called McKesson, the CISO of a healthcare company called Kaiser Permanente. I was the Chief Trust Officer at Salesforce, and now here really owning trusted security at Dropbox. I see the common thread, and that common thread is that if you focus too much on securing the containers themselves, whether it's a drive or a server or a cloud provider, you're missing what's really important, which is securing the data. And if anything, what we've learned is that nowadays there's been a bit of an inversion in the power structure from an IT perspective. It used to be really that IT was dictating the tools to use, and everybody neatly complies and was within the boundaries of the data center, and everybody was happy. And nowadays, it's really that the inversion is that individuals, employees, are bringing interesting new technologies into their businesses. When we look at like Dropbox adoption and the business case for Dropbox for Business, almost always we come into a customer and they already understand the value proposition because their employees have made the choice to use Dropbox in a manner that just kind of like personal choices. It makes me effective. It makes me efficient. I love to use it. So this element, this story then about how do we extend security around that? How do we convert them to Dropbox Business, and how do we convert them to Dropbox Enterprise, and then layer in security technologies is frankly a huge win-win for everybody. The employees get to continue to use the tools that they're most familiar with from their consumer world that they've sourced themselves, and IT organizations, when they formally adopt Dropbox Business, Dropbox Enterprise, and they have that control and visibility all of a sudden. They can define policy, they can do monitoring, and then there's also the extensibility where we have the option of taking vendors like Vera and plugging them in to basically deal with more complicated data protection needs that go above and beyond kind of what you would expect from Dropbox as being a storage provider. So I'm really excited because I'm seeing this all come together now, where there's been a large focus on standardizing on open APIs, and it's creating an amazing opportunity to pull in security vendors and cloud providers and create this like mesh that allows companies to really determine what controls do they need to include, and be agile about it as well in terms of plugging in and taking on various security providers and controls. So I'll stop rambling there for a moment and hand it back to you, Grant.
Yeah, no, I think, thank you, I appreciate that. So then, you mentioned extending the security controls you have have in Dropbox, where do you see that handoff happen between Dropbox and Vera when it comes to rights management and data control?
So when I think about it, I call it my above the line and below the line model. And below the line is everything that Dropbox needs to be building. We need to be building into our product. And above the line is everything we need to look at from a partnership perspective. And when I look at something, when I evaluate a control set such as enterprise rights management capabilities, and I think about, well, should we be building this or should we be partnering? When I do the analysis, like, well, it solves a huge problem set that goes far above and beyond what Dropbox is accountable for in terms of protecting the information. That's one. And it also, if I look at it, very realistically, it's like, do I want to be in a position where I'm developing a highly sophisticated security product versus enabling competition, enabling innovative companies to be really pushing the boundaries on that? And when I look at that space of enterprise rights management, I think it's much more beneficial for our customers if they have the flexibility and the agility to go with innovative market-leading companies like Vera versus potentially having something that's baked into Dropbox. So philosophically, as I do this, it's a much better fit from a partnership perspective than for us to try to build this.
Okay, great. And then, so my last question is, I was looking over who's attending today and who's registered, and it seems like there's a lot of regulated industries, companies with pretty strong requirements around audit and compliance and review. When it comes to enterprise rights management, what are 2 or 3 of the things that they really need to bring in through a partnership with an ERM vendor that's going to help them use cloud collaboration in a trusted way for their industry?
Yeah. I think one of the things to think about is, what does the regulation really say? And many regulations, I really don't know any that basically say you have to client-side encrypt. It's actually more of a risk management decision in many cases. There are HIPAA, for example, that has encryption as addressable, and obviously Dropbox encrypts as well. So we start getting into nuances of, well, how much do you trust? What scenarios are you concerned about? And generally, you can roll it back to a decision-making framework where you have to look at the enterprise's readiness to adopt encryption. And that means, number one, kind of having a mature view of what are the risks you're really trying to manage, whether it's a compliance risk, IP loss risk, and whatnot. Then mapping those risks to data classification strategies. Like, both what data is really important for your business. And then, as you then look at these encryption challenges, the opportunities to apply encryption, my advice would be to not take the binary approach, encrypt everything or encrypt nothing. I think the real benefit is going to come when you selectively encrypt those documents that fall into the highest categorizations, risk categorization, data classification categorizations, for example. The reality is that at the end of the day, Vera is doing a really great job in making encryption as transparent as possible, but there are always going to be trade-offs. And when I consult with companies that want to adopt Dropbox Enterprise, for example, I basically say, look, apply data classification and do that encryption, but for now, if you encrypt everything, you're actually losing some of the value proposition, because Dropbox is not just in the dumb storage and retrieval business. We're there to add value to the information. We're there to be able to help you search and retrieve. And some of that, unfortunately, does tend to get broken. So the moral of the story is basically look at encryption as not a magic silver bullet for everything, but look at it as a selective tool, part of your risk management portfolio, that allows you to take the highest classified category and protect it in a way that's really meaningful to you. And again, when we look at encryption, that ability to wrap the content so it travels with the content no matter where it goes is, I think, extraordinarily important. The other side of this, when we do look at some of the regulatory requirements, not on encryption, but if I think about HIPAA, there is really a vague requirement to track who has access to things. And the thing that excites me about rights management technology isn't necessarily just the protection piece, but the fact that you are creating kind of this indelible centralized audit log that if somebody touches a piece of information, who is authorized to decrypt it, for example, it creates a log entry. And if you ask yourself nowadays, well, do you have that same visibility with a file sitting on a desktop? The answer is no. Nobody turns on logging on desktop for file access or even on file servers in the enterprise. So there's a real leapfrog opportunity here in applying enterprise technology to be able to get insights into visibility how files are used and accessed inside and outside of the boundaries of the organization. Totally separate value proposition from purely the data protection piece. And it's extraordinarily powerful to do analytics on what happens with content. And thirdly, I think when we think about business relationships being pretty ephemeral, and you have these collaboration networks that are there, there's always the challenge around, well, what happens when that business relationship changes or we sever the relationship, and what happens to that data that we shared with the business partner? And it's an extraordinarily powerful capability, not just to prevent leakage, but that you can, at the end of a business relationship, if you have a rights management tool in place like Vera, that you can revoke that access. And it doesn't matter how many copies the other parties may have made. They could have made 100 copies to USB drives and emailed it around. The fact is the protection is with the content, and at any point in time, the owner of that content who generated it can just permanently revoke that access. And that's a whole another new kind of groundbreaking technical capability. So you can tell I'm pretty excited about this. I think this is an amazingly complementary capability to what we at Dropbox provide.
Awesome, thank you. Well, it is actually that last use case you talked about, which is sometimes when a business relationship ends or moves to another stage, you still need to control that data, is one of the first use cases that a lot of current Dropbox business customers bring to us to help us solve. And so to show you how this can work in action, I'm going to bring Veliz on now. Veliz will bring up your screen. But we're going to walk through a quick demonstration of how Dropbox and Vera together can give you the ability to automatically secure these files, that selective security that you mentioned. Track that information all the way down to a local desktop outside of your domain. And then the ability to globally recall that content in Dropbox and beyond, wherever it's available. Veliz, you ready to go?
Absolutely. Thank you, Grant. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and share my screen. And I'm going to move over here to Alex Stein's machine. This is her virtual world. And Alex is going to be working on her quarterly earnings report with her finance team. And they're all collaborating in this Dropbox Business folder that's been secured with Vera. And the reason, I know there are a lot of IT and security directors on the line, and the reason that you can tell that it's been secured is because you see that .html extension at the end. That's the Vera secure shell that's encrypting this very sensitive information, this quarterly earnings report, which is a crown jewel of a company. It's data that you don't want getting out before time. But as an end user, as Alex on the finance team, this secure shell is going to have zero impact to my ability to interact with the document. Dropbox is all about collaboration, and we don't want to impact that experience. So if I were to open the financial statement in Excel, you're going to notice that it's going to open up in its native application. It's going to look like an Excel document, and it's going to feel like a spreadsheet. The only difference that you'll notice is this Vera policy bar at the bottom, which is going to tell Alex what her rights are with the document. So if I hover over the pencil, I can see that edit is allowed, that I can save a copy, that I can print, and that I have access to this file when it's offline. Grant and I were at Dropbox Open a few weeks ago, and I showed this to a customer, and he said, "Wow, that's it? That's a secured file?" And yes, that's it. It's very intentional. We at Vera believe that security that's not usable isn't secure. So we don't want to interrupt the Dropbox workflow. If Alex were to upload another document to this Vera secured folder, let's say she's going to upload the disclosure that's part of the report, Vera is going to automatically secure that document, and you can tell the extension is now .html. Vera has automatically secured this document without any impact to the end user. But as Grant talked a little bit about this a couple of minutes ago, what happens though when content is removed from Dropbox? How do you, as the IT director, as the security director at your company maintain control over that information? So let's turn to that scenario. And let's assume that Alex is working with Thomas. Thomas is an independent auditor. You, as the IT director, have set him up with view-only rights in this folder, but Thomas asks Alex to email him the file instead. So Alex goes and she takes that very same spreadsheet, she makes a copy, she puts it, she drags it to the desktop, and she emails it off to Tom. So I'm going to go and send Tom an email. Please review. I'm going to attach that document that I've removed from Dropbox, and I'm going to send it his way. Now let's flip to Tom's world. So I'm in Tom's virtual machine now. He's in greener pastures. He's our independent auditor. And he opens his email, and he's going to get this. He gets an email from Alex, who he's working with. He opens up. He downloads that file. He's removed the file now from the email. And what you'll see is that Vera is going to enforce those view-only controls. Vera is going to persist those view-only permissions that were in Dropbox, even though Alex removed this file from Dropbox, and even though she sent it in a completely different way. So if you look at the spreadsheet, it looks different. It has a watermark on it. With Tom's email address, and the policy bar is very different to Alex's. So the pencil is grayed out, the saving button is grayed out, the printing is disabled. So Tom only has view-only rights to this document, and what I'm showing you here is Vera is going to secure your file no matter where it travels, and it's going to retain those Dropbox permissions anywhere they go. Patrick talked a little bit about traceability and HIPAA compliance, and it's not just about security, right? It's about having an audit log and control over your information once it leaves your control. So I want to make sure to dive into the Vera dashboard and show you what Vera looks like from an IT admin perspective. At a very high level, this is the dashboard. You have a lot of insights, a lot of data that's really digestible. So you can see how many files you've secured in your organization. You can see the most accessed files, which domains have been accessing these files, like who are these Gmail 2% users over here. You can see all of the file types that Vera has secured, and I showed you a spreadsheet and I showed you a Word document, but Vera secures much more than that. We secure any file type, even GIFs. And you can also see what are the most unauthorized access attempts. But you can go much more granular. So let's dive into that financial statement that Alex was working on, and I can see who in the organization, who at Alex's company has access to the file. What policies? So remember our independent auditor, Tom, he has a watermarked view-only rights. I can see how many times this document has been accessed. I have a complete report, a centralized audit log. That tracking capability that Patrick was talking about, it's all here. I can see when the file was accessed, how long it was accessed for, and in which part of the world. So we're in California, so that's where the file is accessed. But what happens though if you sever that business relationship, right? Like what happens if Alex no longer works with Tom? Tom has moved on. Sure, you can remove Tom from the Dropbox Business folder, but what about that information that he received via email or that he downloaded to his desktop? What Vera is going to allow you to do is we're going to allow you to revoke access. We're going to give you the power to change your mind and completely revoke anyone's access to information even after it's left your control. So if I go to Tom over here and I select him, I can revoke his access. And let me show you, let me turn back to Tom and show you what that looks like. This is Tom's machine. This is the file that he received from Alex. And as I go to download it and open it up, Vera has denied access. Vera is telling me you don't have permission to access this file, even though Tom has the file sitting in his email. So to kind of recap, Vera here is providing end-to-end encryption, wall-to-wall security for Dropbox Business customers, and it's doing it in a way that doesn't impact how Dropbox Business customers work. So let me flip back to the presentation.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Veliz.
Yeah, I'll hand it back to you.
We're just about done here, so I thank everyone for your patience and attention. But we got a number of good questions that came across. Veliz, actually, this one came in during the demo, so I'm going to send this one over to you. So first is what happens if you take that protected file that you sent over to Tom and save a copy, right? Does the protection persist with that file, or what can Vera do in that situation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So even if you save a copy of the file, if I had taken that same spreadsheet and I had made another copy, that .html extension, that Vera secure shell, is going to persist with the document anywhere it goes, anywhere it travels, even duplicates. It'll be the same.
Okay, great. And that also, we have the ability to prevent somebody from saving a copy if necessary. So we can protect that file wherever it goes and even track its information moves between secure files. So the next one, actually, Patrick, I think this would be a good one for you. So assuming that we want to move forward with Dropbox Business or Dropbox Enterprise, do you have any recommendations for someone who is trying to make the case for moving their business to Dropbox?
It's really interesting because it's actually a great question. I've seen a change recently where more CISOs are actually leading this discussion for their enterprises because they realize that if they just ignore the current usage, which is a lot of people and teams using individual accounts, then they have a problem. They can't really ignore it. And if they try to block it, they put themselves in an odd position that they're taking away productivity tools that are really beloved by their teams and impact productivity. And they put themselves in a bad political position as well. You don't want to alienate your stakeholders. So more and more, the kind of advice that we're seeing in the discussions that we're having are around the adoption and the conversion of moving people away from the consumer elements of Dropbox to Dropbox for Enterprise as a risk management tool for the company. So it's really a win-win for everyone, especially for security leaders at times who are viewed in a negative light where the doctor knows of the world. We get to say no to the business. In this case, there's actually a positive conversation to be had around security leaders that are driving a risk reduction for the enterprise, but doing so in a manner that they're actually enabling their employees by saying, we're going to legitimize Dropbox for Business, and we're going to roll it in and wrap security around it. So there's a security story, but there's certainly also a massive productivity enabling story for the enterprise.
Got it. Thank you. And then related to that, I think we can all take a shot at this one. We talked a lot about protecting information and doing it in controlled and uncontrolled systems, but in a really collaborative enterprise, this says, where does the responsibility for protecting content lie? Is it with the person who created the document, or is it with the security team and the IT team?
I think it depends on the nature of the enterprise and what you're trying to protect. I think clearly there's always an individual responsibility to be careful with data, and maybe you guys can go into a little bit around the options that you have and how easy it is to make those selections. But there's also a growing need, especially in large enterprises, to have Really tools that look at and scour through content, provide some degree of data classification on the content, and then take action, such as applying a ERM policy to that data. So there's a kind of like it's shared accountability. I don't think there's an easy answer to who should have the accountability. But clearly, if you look at the role of, say, the security and the legal team and whatnot, somebody needs to define the business policy and the classification levels themselves first before you can have a discussion around the accountability and the implementation.
Yeah, I think that's true, and we've seen that with a lot of our customers, is that it's a shared responsibility, because on one side there are, what are the guidelines for appropriate use of information at our company on this team, but then you almost have to delegate some of the responsibility for identifying which content should be protected to the content creator, because there's no way for one centralized team to know what's in every document that's being created.
Right. And there's also an element of trust but verify. So, there are a number of data loss prevention tools available, including ones that integrate directly with Dropbox Business, Dropbox Enterprise, like CloudLock, for example, and SkyEye, that will go through the documents and they will try to identify content that may be sitting there unprotected and that you can then get flagged on from a security team perspective that, hey, we need to take some action. We found credit card number sitting XY there, sitting somewhere, and based on the classification that it needs to be encrypted. So there are synergies with data classification and data loss prevention tools.
Okay, great. So I think we have time for one more, and there's actually kind of a multi-part question here, which is great. I'll try to, for all of you, this is from 3 different people, but they're all touching on the same area, so I'll try to bring it together. First, unrelated, we will, I've had a couple requests for sharing the deck in addition to the recording. So we will make a recording of this available. We'll send it out to all of you who've registered and attended. It'll also be on the Vera.com website. And also a request for the deck. So I think maybe what we'll do is spin up a Dropbox folder with this in it and share that over email so you can have access to it. But Veliz, if you can help me with these. So the questions are around, okay, different ways that people are thinking about, well, can I get around the protection? How can I manage it? I think this is getting to this idea of data in use. So one is, okay, great, well, what if I save the file to a desktop? Does it have to be saved to Dropbox to get the protection? And then second, what if I open a file that I received and go and try to copy information out of it? How can we deal with this kind of information everywhere problem?
Yeah, those are great questions. So for the first one, Vera protects your information anywhere it's stored. So we have this native integration with Dropbox where any file uploaded will be automatically secured, but Vera can also protect files in the desktop that are not uploaded directly into Dropbox, and we'd be happy to share more information and dive deeper into that at a later time. And for the second one,
yeah, the second one I can take that. It was, what happens if I copy information out, right? And yeah, that's a big risk. I'm sharing a document. It's got financial data in it. It has PII inside the document. How do I protect that snippet of data that's actually the valuable piece from getting out? As part of what you can do with a Vera protected document is actually restrict how copy-paste works. And so you could say, if I have a secure document that I've protected, I've classified, I'm going to make sure that I can actually disable my ability to copy and paste information out. I can turn it off completely, or I can allow you to go from one secure document to another secure document so I don't lose control over the information, but basically prevent that data loss vector within the file. Okay, well, I think we are a few minutes past where we said we'd be. I know there's a couple more questions here, but Veliz and I will follow up with you afterwards, and you can always get us directly with questions. We're happy to continue the conversation either on Twitter or via our email addresses. I'm just Grant at Vera.com.
And I'm just Veliz at Vera.com.
Nice and easy around here at Vera Security. But Patrick, thank you for your time and your insight today. We really appreciate it. I think we got a lot out of the dialogue. And to everyone else who joined us, thank you, and we look forward to hearing from you soon.